This session is going to focus on the radius server configuration in the router. This will be set up to utilize user credentials to establish a connection between the end device and the radius server. In radius terminology, the end device, such as a laptop, is also known as the supplicant. The radius client, or network access server, in this example, will be an on-time networks switch. So the end device, or supplicant, will be connected to a switch port. Then the switch and the radius server will communicate using the Extensible Authentication Protocol, or EAP, to accept or deny the user request. If the request is accepted, then the end device will be granted access to the network. Okay, this router has a radius server configured. Let's take a look at the syntax. To copy the syntax used in this example, check for that in the video description. Okay, we need to navigate to Configure and Aries. Here is the radius server configuration. This syntax can be added towards the top of the configuration before the links, for example. First, we have to enable the server with enable true. Then we have a client configured. This client is called switch1. The IP address of the switch is 192.168.10.1. Of course, use a more secure password, but the secret key here is password. Then we have one user defined. In this example, this will be a Linux computer with these user credentials. Okay, one other thing we need to do is allow the ports used for radius into the firewall. So from configure, we can navigate to firewall. Here we have added UDP ports 1812 and 1813, which are just the default ports used for radius. And that is it for the router configuration. In this example, the switch is already configured, but to see the switch configuration, that video will be linked here. Now, to test the radius server, we will start a TCP dump on the router to see the connection attempt. So we will run netdump interface eth0 filter port 1812. We can just filter on port 1812 to see this. Let's run that TCP dump. Okay, now let's initiate the connection from the end device. Okay, after we initiate the connection from the end device, we can see the radius access request from the switch to the server. Then we can see the access challenge from the server back to the switch. Then after a few messages back and forth, we finally see the access accept from the server back to the switch, so the end device has been granted access to the network. All right, we have now successfully configured the radius server in the router and showed a successful connection attempt from the end device. Thank you for tuning in. See you next time.